Welcome to the Fit Vegan Podcast, the show where we help you optimize your health, fitness, and mindset on a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. My name is Maxime Sigouin. I am a former triathlete, powerlifter, bodybuilder, and basketball player. And I've been vegan for 9 years. I've also been able to coach over 350 vegans from 20 different countries to completely transform their bodies and their health. I'm excited for you to listen to today's episode. Let's get into the show. All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Vegan Podcast. Today, I am joined with the famous Coach Sarah, who's our head Fit Vegan coach and in-house holistic nutritionist, and we're going to be talking today about how to adjust your mindset, training, and nutrition when you're injured or sick, because it's highly requested from some of our members. But first, let's just welcome Sarah. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm excited. This is our second podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Good thing I asked before. I'm very honest. So yeah, I'm very excited to chat with you today because I know the members love you. You're always bring a lot of knowledge to their group calls every single week, and they definitely want. I think they want your insights more than mine at this point on a lot of topics. So yeah, very excited to dive into today's topic. But any things that you would like to add, maybe a little intro for the people that are not members, that are not too sure as to like who you are, your certification, your experience, and all that?
Oh boy. All right. Yeah. Okay. I'm Sarah. I have been a personal trainer for close to 20 years. And through my personal training experience with my clients, I found that what was lacking is my nutritional knowledge. And I really, really wanted to help everybody get to their goals. And I became a nutritionist about halfway through my personal training career to help to better service my clients and get a better. And actually, I found I learned a lot about myself through learning about nutrition. And I think we're going to talk about this a lot on the podcast today. But yeah, I just wanted a well-rounded knowledge base for my people.
Yeah. Well, and so we've been working together for, it's going to be 2 years now. And I think like in 1 or 2 weeks, very, very soon. And so, yeah, Sarah's been from the ground up when we started Fit Vegan coaching. And so I'm very grateful and I feel very blessed to have her as part of the team. And she's brought amazing results to our members. She crushes all the meal plans and nutrition aspect of the program. So that's why today I'm excited to talk to her about obviously nutrition and training and how that needs to be adjusted, but also from a mindset perspective, because you do have 20 years of coaching experience and you've dealt with a lot of these scenarios. So the first one I think we should address is being injured, right? Yeah. And then we can talk about maybe like all the components of being injured, modifications that need to take place. And then we can go into like sickness, because I know a lot of people have been getting let's say COVID and having to like step away from training and how to navigate that. So let's talk about injury first. What are some of the key things or the main components that people should look at when they first get injured?
I would start with why. Why did you get injured? Is there a breakdown in your movement patterns? Is it a training issue? Like, are you overtraining? And then you can dive deeper into the overtraining issue. Like, is it unhealthy? Overtraining, and is there issues that need to be addressed there? And then I think injury is an opportunity to look more closely at what you've been doing and where you want to go.
Yeah, it's definitely, I feel like it's very common to get overuse injury because people they're doing too hard, right? I feel it's common in society that the more you do, the better it must be for you to perform, for you to build muscle, for you to lose fat, for you to reach whatever goal. And we've definitely seen it with members throughout the years that there's always that mindset, like more is better. And so I didn't think of that before, but yeah, that's a great opportunity to learn, like, is mobility terrible? Like, all right, you're getting injured when you're doing a squat because your hips you can't go all the way down.
Right.
And so looking at that is powerful. And so once someone has an injury, right, we talked about mindset on one of the groom calls, because I think it came up from Angelina. It was like her idea to to record this podcast. So thank you, Angelina. How can someone adjust their mindset when they first get injured, knowing that most people are very self-identified with their level of activity?
Yeah, that's a hard one, and I can only relate from my experiences. I overtrained for years and years and years, and I
Mhm.
just didn't get it. I didn't get why I was getting chronically injured. So I think really taking a step back and figuring out why, like, and learning other coping mechanisms also. Like, are you using exercise to compensate for your stress and your emotional release, right? Um, I think that's really, really key. But then also reaching out for help too, right? Like, if you do have a mobility issue, how can I improve that? What do I need to do to improve so I don't have to experience this injury again? Um, and then
Yeah.
looking at other modalities, right? Like, do you need to incorporate a little bit more yoga into your life?
Yeah. So you talk about like the different modalities of including some yoga and some stretching, which let's be honest, most people don't add and
Right.
sometimes neglect or sometimes decide not to do after a workout because let's be honest, I'm a part of it. I'm a part of the problem a little bit. You're tired after the workout. You're like, I don't want to stretch. It's not going to do much for me, but ultimately it does make a big difference.
Yeah, and as you age, we're not going to be young forever. I think it's really important to incorporate and just kind of value your stretch and your mobility. It will improve your overall performance in the gym. And I know it's
Yeah.
counterintuitive, but um like I know some CrossFitters, they'll warm up and do mobility training exercises for like 2 hours. That's their
Yeah.
job, but
Yeah.
but they place a huge emphasis on mobility and their range of motion because that will allow them to do the movement patterns to their fullest and also more efficiently because you're not having to deal with tightness or an immobile joint that your body has to work around.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at that's true. CrossFitters are really good as much as people give them shit for their form. Like their mobility work is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
If you, I can just think back of times where some people are going to squat, but their hips are so tight that they can't go down to 90 degrees. But then if they are able to go down to 90 degrees, all their weight shifts to like one side of the body because there's so many imbalances and tightness, and the body just tries to find the path of least resistance, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
then there's just overuse on that one side because you're always like going down like this to the side.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, if you have injury to say your upper body and you haven't appropriately dealt with why you're working out so much,
Hmm.
you're going to create injury in your lower body because you're going to overuse that. So having a moderate approach and a balance to injury is really important, I think, too.
Yeah. So would you say that like lack of mobility would lead to overcompensation, which would lead to injury, basically?
Oh, yeah. And improper movement, right? So like for running, like if you have tight hips, you're gonna
Yeah.
naturally alter your gait,
Yeah.
which will not be efficient and can cause wear and tear on the joint that it normally wouldn't have.
Yeah. So many people go from a like a desk job to like a lot of high
Yeah.
performers in the group, like ourselves included. We've done triathlons, long distance racing. You go from a sitting position from at your desk, and then you're like, I'm just gonna go for a 20-kilometer run. Your hips have been like tightened all day, and then you just expect them to open up for 20 kilometers.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so obviously, so we talk like overuse injury, overcompensation, which could lead to injury. Not having the proper form makes a world of a difference.
Yeah.
And so, from a we touched on this a little bit earlier, from a mindset aspect, once you get injured, training,
Mm.
nutrition, and mindset needs to be adjusted, right?
Yeah.
And so let's keep mindset for the last one because I feel like that would be like the biggest
Yeah,
topic.
I
But
agree.
training, how would you make adjustment to someone's training if they have a current injury? I know it's situation dependent. If
Yeah.
like it's a knee, a hip, a IT band, or like a shoulder or something.
Yeah, and it depends on the type of injury too, right? If it's really acute, then obviously rest, right? You have
Mhm.
to allow the joint or the injury to heal. If you need to seek out PT, find that help to help you through. I spend many hours in the physiotherapist's office getting
Yeah.
help, so that it doesn't become permanent. So I would seek out extra help. Um, and then also try to strengthen that area once the injury's healed.
Yeah,
Would
because they'll
be
have atrophied for sure.
yeah. Um, but I think rushing back to working out is not ideal, right? You want to slowly increase. So some of those PT exercises, like we've all done them, very mind numbing, very boring,
Yeah, you're just moving
very
your ankle side to
moving,
side,
yeah.
forward. Yeah.
So, but placing a lot of value and doing them. So I don't know how many times I've been in the PT's office and they say, "Oh, did you do your exercise?" And I'm like, "No." Well, that'll help you. So like when I get injured now, I've made all these mistakes, so I'm by no means perfect, but I take my PT very seriously, and that becomes my workout.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's good.
yeah,
It is a replacement for your workout because you can't do a full workout.
absolutely.
So obviously, like when our members come in and they're injured, we're gonna make all the necessary modifications
Of
for
course.
them so they
Yeah,
don't have to figure it out. But if you don't have a coach, then yeah, going to physiotherapist, doing some of the exercises and listening to what they say is gonna be really valuable.
yeah.
In terms of nutrition, how do you adjust nutrition when someone is injured, knowing that potentially a little bit more inflammation in the body, there's less energy expenditure? Like, how do you make those little tweaks?
Again, situational.
Yeah,
But for the most,
everything we're talking about is situational for
yeah,
sure.
but generally speaking, you can definitely help with inflammation by having anti-inflammatory foods like turmeric and ginger added into your diet. We eat a whole foods plant-based diet anyway, so it's very healthy, it's full of nutrients, so it's going to help heal that injury and help control the inflammation, which is a natural biological response to injury.
Yeah,
Um, you might have to adjust calories down a little bit depending on the amount of cardio being performed. But a lot of times the nutrition, if you're depending on the phase you're in and what your goals are, um, not a lot needs to be adjusted, to be honest.
yeah. No, it doesn't, right? Like
Oh,
if the cardio is the thing that's being replaced, like yes, you're gonna burn a bit more calories. If it's strength training, like you burn calories, but it's very minimal during
very
your
minimal.
strength training
Yeah.
sessions, right? So yeah, it's definitely like if it's a foot injury, then you can't bike or do cardio or anything like
Yeah.
that. So, but we can dive into the mindset part because that's kind of connected. It's you're bored because you're not doing as much, so you want to turn to food more, and then it makes it hard to stick to a potentially like smaller amount of food.
Yeah. And you don't want to create that trigger, right? So adjusting calories to compensate for injury may not be the best bet to go.
Hmm.
um, because it can be triggering for people who can't expend that stress, because when you're injured you're worried and you have emotions and it's sometimes hard for us to deal with, so oftentimes people use exercise to expend that stress and that energy. So when you can't do that and then you're also cutting a lot of calories to compensate for the injury, you kind of it's kind of a perfect storm. So we want to keep everybody's mental health through the injury nice and stable, and know that they're supported and that we're going to get you through the injury, don't worry. It's not a big deal. So but yeah, we definitely use food to cope.
Yeah.
um
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like what you share is like there's such a I think people don't realize that. Also think that just coaching is just very logical and data driven, which it
Yeah,
is to a certain extent, but there's such a huge psychological component to it, which you refer to like as mental health in this scenario.
yeah,
If someone gets injured, the logical thing is there's less energy expenditure, let's cut the food, right? But then
that's
if
not
we cut the food, which is a logical thing to do, from a psychological standpoint, oh, I feel restricted, I'm bored, I actually want to eat more. And then if they don't respect that and they eat more, then people feel terrible that they ate more, and then they're more likely to eat even more. And so by not cutting the food, you're actually going to end up in a better position than if you are to cut it and not respect it.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
people don't think of that sometimes. It's like, I just need to cut. I'm like, yeah, yes, but you're going to get bored. And if you go over, you'll be like, oh, I messed it up. And then people throw in the towel and then they just go
yeah.
overboard.
Yeah, and then you feel defeated, right? Not only are you defeated by the injury, but you kind of made an error with
Yeah.
food, and that's not what we want. We
Yeah.
want people to feel good. And then again, like I said, like let's look at why. Like
Mhm.
let's see why you're injured. Let's look at how shine a light on how you're coping with daily stress. Is there an opportunity to like incorporate more meditation and more journaling, mindfulness, to like put another tool in your toolbox with coping, right?
Yeah. And I think that's one part that people don't, honestly, people don't understand. I think people don't think of. And I just want to do a little disclaimer, like we're not pointing fingers. Like I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it's the same for you, but like for me, I've been there. I've cut my food and then I went
Oh
over
yeah.
it because I was injured. Like I've put on a bunch of weight out of injuries. Like I've been there. So we're talking from experience, not pointing fingers. But yeah, the stress does compound in your body, even if you're training, potentially adequately. If you're going a little bit overboard, but you're not sleeping well and you're really stressed, your risk of injury goes through the roof. Even if you're eating right and you're exercising right,
Yep.
really stressed, no proper sleep, something's going to happen at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your cortisol levels will be high chronically, which
Hmm.
will increase low grade inflammation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why we include meditation for our members, which a lot of them didn't expect coming in. This is trading
Yeah.
nutrition. Now it's like, oh, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to read books. What is happening?
Yes.
I want to talk about the self-identification with
Uh,
fitness that people have. And I would love for you to share from your perspective because we have a similar background when it comes to endurance sport.
uh,
But before, when I was a bodybuilder, I identified as a bodybuilder. And so when I was injured and I couldn't work out,
mm,
to me it was the end of the world. And the
yeah.
last big self, uh, how can I say that? Just like identification that I had was being an Ironman, a triathlete. I
Hmm.
was like, this is who I am. This is what I do. I train this way. I train 10 to 15 hours every week. And then ultimately I got injured, right?
Of
And
course.
you get injured at one point because that's what happens in those sports. It's abusive.
Hmm.
And then it's like, well, I can't do this thing. And I came to realize like, well, identify myself so much as being that when I'm not that, I have no idea who I am.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people, and I'm bringing this to the awareness for everyone, like some people that tend to over exercise identify as a healthy, fit person in their group, but sometimes it becomes too much where you forget who you are. And when you can't do that, you're like, what is life? Who am I?
Yeah.
And you start to feel a little bit depressed, to be
Yeah.
honest,
Absolutely.
because you can't be you as you perceive yourself to be. Did you have any experience like that in the past?
Oh, yeah. I overtrained for years. And I remember running a half marathon in January with a lung infection because I'm like, I paid the fee, I'm running. And
Oh,
I remember being at the start line and my dad's going, "What are you no." And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm running this. I trained, I'm doing this. And I look back and what was I thinking? Like I was putting my health at risk. Like
yeah,
you're doing this in the name of health, which
yeah.
is so absurd, right? And I would alter like appointments and socialization to work around my workouts. I would risk relationships because I had to work out.
Yeah.
It's just silly, and it was obsessive. But I switched from coping with food when I was heavier I literally just switched from food to exercise
Yeah.
without dealing with the emotional aspect,
Yeah.
and putting in more tools in my toolbox to cope with stress. Every time I felt stress, I need to go for a run.
Hmm.
And because society um it values healthy looking bodies, thinness, and being active, like people are like, wow, look at you, and you get positively reinforced, and that just feeds into this obsession and
Hmm.
this really unhealthy behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, it's so true that you just go from a coping mechanism to another.
Yeah.
When when I was doing triathlon, it was, that's when Jen had cancer and we're kind of
Yeah.
going through the whole process. Like 100%. That was my triathlon phase. That was my coping mechanism. I
Yeah.
could swim for 2 hours, not think of anything. It's
Yeah.
such a repetitive movement that you can turn off your brain.
Yeah.
And that's your way of coping is just like the numbing of not having to think.
Yeah.
And just talking about injury made me think of something. The last half Ironman I did was in Whistler.
Yeah.
and I was in a car accident 2 weeks before, and I smashed both my knees into the dashboard.
Yeah.
And so my knees were hurting so badly. I still showed up. I did the swim. I had a hard time walking for 2 weeks. And then I swam, I biked, which was fine. I ran, and then at a kilometer, I think like 10,
Yeah.
stepped on the ground. My knee just gave out.
Yeah.
So much pain. Like I just, all the nerves were hurting, and I was crying. And then
Yeah.
the people was like, "Hey, like we'll drive you. You basically have to DNF, right?
Yeah.
You do not finish." And I was like, I'm like, I'm finishing this because I was so
Yeah.
identified with it. And I walked, jogged, limped
Yeah.
for whatever 11-ish kilometers,
Yes.
cried 3/4 of the
Right.
way through.
Yes.
It was so much pain. And then I finished, and I was like, "Oh, cool. I'm proud that I finished," but I was so stupid. That was not like it was because of the identity that I had built into being this person. Like I say, I'm going to do something, I'm going to finish it, even if it compromises my health and long-term health of my knees.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's no like little voice that in some of us that gives us reason. Even the
Yeah.
people, I'm sure people who were supporting you in that race were probably saying, look, this is probably not a good idea. You were just, and you're like, nope, I'm not listening.
Yeah.
No, I'm
There
doing
was no
this.
room for this is not a good idea.
Yeah.
And all it was in my head is like, I need to finish. Like there's no option. I'm not thinking of my knees in 10 years from now. I'm tall. I need my knees really
Do.
tall. So like none of that. I was just like, I need to finish because I was so identified with that.
Yeah.
And it was so hard to detach.
And it's hard to say, I can't. And we talked
Mhm.
about this in the group call yesterday with Nicole. I can't is such a difficult thing to think about in terms for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Like for some of us, I can't do that. This is not in our vocabulary.
Yeah. Yeah. Along the same lines of no.
Yeah.
No, I can't take this on. No, I
Yeah.
don't want to take this on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, you talked about like, I think the coping mechanism is an interesting conversation
Mhm.
because it like you mentioned, there's that positive reinforcement that you're, it's if you look a certain way, it's a good
Mhm.
thing. And it might seem for some people, there might be people listening are like, oh, this is a cool coping mechanism, or at least you're getting fit. But it's really negative. It definitely has consequences to it. And for some people that may be listening that are like, oh, like I do that. And if you work out a lot and you really think about it, you probably do to a certain extent. Like you don't need to train that much
Mhm.
ultimately to be really fit, like 3 4 times a week, you're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a lot, there's probably something in there that's like you running away from something.
Yeah. I think people have to look at volume and intensity when they're looking at their training schedule, right? And when we get requests of, I want to run 4 days a week, oftentimes we say, no, this is
Yeah.
not healthy. This is going to impact your weight, because it will. Overtraining
Yeah,
will impact your weight loss, right? If that's
for
what you're
sure.
after. Not only that, but overuse injury, all the stuff that we've just talked about. But like training intensity and volume is the two key factors I would look at when determining whether or not somebody's overtraining, because it is a fine line, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
working out is important, but you have to make that decision of, oh, over 60 minutes 6 days a week, clearly that's too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I want to be the devil's advocate here because I
Mhm.
know that it's not right to like overtrain like that. But I do want to bring up for people that are doing like endurance events, like we talked
Yeah.
about, like doing
Okay. Yeah.
triathlons and things like that. So if you're doing it for fun and you want to challenge yourself,
Yeah.
then I think that's a healthy place to come from.
Yeah, if you have a goal or something, but I think we're talking, and we should have maybe prefaced this is not normal training
Yeah. No, it's not. It shouldn't be like that all year
all
round
the
for
time.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah, it is a coping mechanism. And again, I don't want to sound like I just want to be like share the wisdom here that you and I have and having gone through it. I think we both came to the same place of like I can work out in a place where I'm healthy, I'm happy, I feel good. I don't need to do more because there's so much more to life than to work out.
And we
Um,
still have goals, right? Like you still have goals in your fitness, and so do I, but it's
yeah,
not obsessive.
yeah, yeah. I feel like and again, we're going off on a tangent here, but I think it's powerful because I never get to talk about this stuff with anyone.
Okay.
Um, a lot of people will train, yes, as a coping mechanism, but it's also serve as a piece of self-validation.
Yeah,
Like fitness is used for so many things,
it
right?
is.
As a piece of self-validation, increasing confidence, what the one, it's a coping
Acceptance,
mechanism, acceptance.
acceptance in a peer group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A sense of community and camaraderie, right?
Mhm.
I can just hearken come back to my CrossFit days. Like the community in that group is so strong. And
Yeah.
people will often subject themselves to multiple intense workouts just for the community,
Yeah. Just to
right?
work out with a certain group a
Yep.
few times a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had any experience with that? And I'll like with using fitness as like, yes, as a coping mechanism, but then using fitness as a piece of self-acceptance. Cause like
Hmm.
I have multiple times
Oh,
for many
totally.
years.
And then also I would use it for proving to people that I have value.
Hmm.
Yeah, right? Like in the CrossFit world, I would say, yeah, I can do that workout that's posted on that board and I can come in the first top, 5 individuals in that class because I'm strong. I would kill myself, but it would
Yeah.
just say I would prove to myself that I'm valuable. I should be accepted in this group, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and yeah, and it just harkens back to like a sense of self, right? Like I just didn't feel great about myself without that piece.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just to kind of like bring everything up on the mindset topic, like for people listening, like, yes, you can work out.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously it's good for you. It's good for your health. You should do it. You
Yep,
should do
yep.
like cardio, heart training sessions, but then just trying to come to a place and like I don't know how long it took you, but I've been training for 17 years and I only got to that place like 2 years ago, right? It took
Stay the same.
yeah, it
Yeah,
took a really long
all
time
the time.
to get a place to where like I work out because I feel good, it's fun. If
Yeah,
I have more body fat on me, I'm good. Like I told you, it's like when I did my Tulum cut and I was
yeah,
really lean, I felt terrible. I didn't
yeah,
like
you
I like
did.
having a bit more fat 'cause I feel so strong.
Yeah.
Right? So where you're if you have a bit more fat, like you're still a good person, you still look
Yeah.
fit, you're okay. And where it's not a coping mechanism because once I lost the coping mechanism, because I stopped triathlon, like I think a year before she passed, like once I stopped triathlon as my coping mechanism, then it was hell in my head because I was
Yeah.
going through so much. And I was like, I don't have this escape thing anymore. And so I feel like potentially for people that are injured, that might be a thing. Like the coping mechanism isn't there anymore. And you feel like you just want to get started because you can't deal with what's in your head.
Yeah. Oftentimes when there's stress or something on our minds, um, the reaction, the intuitiveness is to take action. And often
Mhm.
that comes in the form of exercise, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's like the ultimate action. And when you can't due to injury, you're kind of left looking around going, what now? Like,
Yeah.
what am I going to do now? And, um, and I was thinking about this before we had this call. I'm like, I don't know how I got here. I don't. It just
Yeah.
kind of happened. I think age also and being around the right people helps.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, being surrounded by people like us, being
Yeah.
like in a tribe, which I feel like it's a really healthy place. A lot of members have changed their habits from being like excessive over exercisers to now diminishing and having a greater understanding of what healthy exercise looks like.
Yeah. And the education that we provide, um, that exercise is not a good form of weight management.
Hmm.
It's not. It's good for many other things, bone health, joint health, cardiovascular health, lymphatic. There's so many other things that exercise is good for, but weight management, not necessarily. That's where your nutrition comes into play.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can train for Ironman, right? Train 15 hours a week, but have terrible nutrition and you're still gonna put on weight or have terrible body composition.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the commonly held belief is that weight management is 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 dealt with through cardiovascular endurance and training. That's wrong.
You yeah. And I'm not, I don't want to bash triathletes, but most triathletes that do it as weekend warriors. I'm not talking about professionals because that's what they do for a living, but
Yeah.
most weekend warriors for triathletes have terrible body composition. I've been to like over 50 races. Like most of them have terrible body composition. If
That's all.
if cardio was a solution, it would have been reflected.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why our program's so different. It's because we place emphasis on resistance training,
That's what
not
makes it,
cardio.
even for triathletes, like strength training is so powerful.
Yeah.
Right? You never do a race and it's your heart that gives out. It's your legs or it's your
Right.
arms in the swim. It's never the
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unless you're like sprinting. All right, that's the like legs would give out first. Other things are going to slow you down. You need that muscular endurance.
Yeah.
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 So moving into like being sick and being injured, like talking about people that have, we have a few members that have COVID right now. There's kind of like waves of people as there's waves happening in the world. The big thing we see is people trying to come back too quickly,
Yeah.
right? They're like, I need to work out, which again could fall under the realm, not saying that it is, of coping mechanism, of self-identification to exercise and all that.
Pressure to
But
get their goal in a certain period of time.
exactly. And so how would you suggest that people navigate these, I'd say, bumps in the road, right? Just the speed bumps that are kind of, they slow you down for a little bit, but then you get to pick up after, and the people that want to come back too quickly.
I would say check in with your body first.
Yeah.
Always check in. How do I feel? Am I feeling fatigued during the day? Am I able to make it through the day without wanting a nap? Because oftentimes, depending on the person, COVID can really hit you hard. And because I've had a few members where they're usually very energetic and, you know, high energy throughout the day, and they're getting their butts kicked and
Mhm.
super frustrating. So that's where I would really encourage for these members to reach out to their coaches and just be honest with us and say, look,
Mhm.
I'm really struggling. Like, I really want to get back to it, but I'm fatigued. And I think we need to take cues from our body. If you're fatigued, obviously you need to rest, right? And then I always say, you know, the one of the best forms of exercise out there is actually just going for a walk outside.
Yeah.
So start there and just go for a 10-15 minute walk and then check in with your body, see how it goes, and then slowly increase your duration, and then slowly increase your intensity, and not rush back, and just take cues from your body. If you're tired, then take a step back and rest.
Yeah. It's probably the smartest machine that exists, right? It'll literally tell you what it needs.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it also, like, if you're trying to come back too quick, your hiatus is supposed to last like 7 days, for example, for COVID might last 2 weeks. And now you just missed 2 weeks of workout because you're trying to come back too early.
Oh,
And it just keeps like delaying it.
yeah.
And I would say I consider myself a fairly healthy individual. It knocked me out for 7 days. I
Yeah.
was sleeping, I couldn't work out, I was barely eating. It was so rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's just life throws you a little punch, it's trying to get the positive out of it.
Yeah.
This, like, I get more time to read, I get more time to sleep, because when realistically will you ever take the time to sleep this much? You probably won't.
No, no. Yeah, and then investigating other coping mechanisms too, right? Like,
Hmm.
I can't work out, so like use it to your advantage. I like things happen. I don't want to get all like philosophical, but I we
Do it. I
things
love that stuff.
we things happen to us for a reason. It's not random. And
Mhm.
so I think you
Absolutely.
need to glean every bit of wisdom out of that, in that situation and that experience, so that when it comes up again for you, you know how better to approach it and look at it and manage it best.
Yeah. I'm a big believer of that. I think every lesson that is being presented to you, if
Mhm.
you don't learn it, will be continue being presented to you in a different
100%.
form until you learn it.
Yep.
Um, I just went to church actually for the first time in like over a year and a half last
Wow.
Sunday.
Yes.
And the pastor said something. It's like, identify before it intensifies. And
Oh,
I was like, "Yeah, that's pretty good." Because
yeah.
there's some lessons that we're like, I'm not gonna learn from this. I'm just gonna push it aside. Hopefully it never comes back, but it always ends up coming back.
It always does. If you look back throughout all of the things that you've experienced in your life, you always have a repetition of the same thing if you don't deal with it. And it'll continue like that for the rest of your life. So why not, you know, get the help that you need, or face it head on and learn from it so that you can
Yeah.
go into new experiences.
Yeah. And just for people that think that it's worth it to delay it, it's not, because it just gets more intense. It just gets darker and stronger the more you delay it.
I agree.
Right. And if we can dive into like fat loss a little bit, right? Like we've had members throughout the years that 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of trying to lose the weight. And it
Yeah,
always comes down to like, there's always a blockage for everyone at one point. Either it's
always.
with meal prep, either it's nutrition, either it's social events, whatever it may be. But ultimately, every single time it comes down to something that's within themselves that they don't want to confront. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's been showing up for 10, 20, 30, 40 years every single time. And I feel like every member we've had has their point where they have a hard time and they have to confront something. And that kind of makes or break a lot of transformation, honestly. Like we're there to support them through chat, through one on one calls, through group calls, their check ins. But there's always a point for every member where it's like, if you get past that, you've learned the lesson you were supposed to learn and then you just move forward and they get great results.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's value in loving yourself where you are,
Yeah.
because if you are, that negative self-talk through injury or illness or whatever, or just wanting to be different, because wanting to change your body composition is fine, but showing yourself love and positive self-talk, because you talk to yourself more than anybody, right?
Yeah.
um, is important, because if you keep on saying, oh, I'm too fat, or I have got too much fat on my body, or I'm too weak, or whatever, you're telling yourself that you're not good enough, right?
Hmm.
So I think it's important that we need to show, and I try really hard to tell my members that, you're good enough now, but there's nothing wrong with wanting to change how you look.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know if you know who Peter Crone is.
From
That's an amazing, just amazing podcast, really like philosophical guy.
Yeah,
But he was talking about like, we always put this in the future of like, oh, when I lose 20 pounds. And we talked about this last Friday, right? Of like, oh, when I get lean or when I get this body, when I fit in those jeans, things will be better. So it's always the idea of that the future will solve everything. And then he was like, have you ever been to the future? I never been, right? You can never be in the future. You're always in the now, right?
wow, yeah,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
we talked about how never it is never the way that you think it's going to be once you have your body. And that's kind of like, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but if you go to get a six pack and you get a six pack, like you're going to be the same person just with a six pack. Whatever insecurities, fear you have inside of you, they're not going to go away. They're still going to be there. Whatever amount of success you have, shit's still going to be there every time you hit a milestone. And it's that willingness to take on whatever would show up. And I think like that's what I liked about what we built with
Yeah,
Fit Vegan is we're not just like, here's a training, here's a meal plan. And I
yeah,
feel like sometimes that's what people want, but that's not what people need,
yeah,
because that's not going to solve anything. And that's why we have the group calls, the one-on-one chats, and we're so focused on, mindset. And I would say like emotional intelligence too, when we have some of those conversations with members.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what you've been doing will get you to where you have been, but not where you want to go. And
Hmm.
that's why it's really important that people, are receptive to our coaching and are open to new ideas and ways of doing things, because you can only get so far, and then you're going to get what you've got in from the past and how you've approached it. But opening up yourself to, maybe looking at those things that need to be addressed emotionally, um, and opening yourself up to eating differently and training differently, um, will get you to, a different future than what you're experiencing now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just put this for anyone that has a coach, right? I have several in my life. If you bring on a coach into your life for a specific area, we'll just use fitness in this and nutrition in this scenario. Like we have all of our members, like we want the best for every single one of them. Like we talked about this often, like that's my biggest stressor in my whole life right now. It's not even the three businesses or whatever else I have going on. It's like are the members getting the results and doing what they're supposed to do so that they can like achieve their goal. Like that's my
Yeah,
biggest stress. Um, and if a coach says something to you and they have their best, like they want the best for you, and whatever they say triggers you, ask yourself, why does it trigger you?
Yeah.
Right? You have someone here that wants the best for you, right? Like we've done it almost over 500 times at this point with all our success stories.
Yep.
We know how to do it, right? And so if a coach says something and it triggers you, why is it triggering you? There's definitely an opportunity there for you to learn.
Yeah. 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 And move forward. It's
Yeah.
obviously coming up again for you, and somebody who's coaching you is seeing it. And we see things differently from our perspective versus an outsider's perspective. So there is value to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not we are involved in the process, but we're not as emotionally involved as the members are. And so we can see things as they actually are
Mhm.
from an outsider perspective. And
Always
yeah,
with love.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just had a call with my Tony Robbins coach and he pointed out some stuff and I was so triggered. I was like, oh, I hate this. And he's like, why are you triggered? And he started asking me questions. I was like, I know you're right, but it's like it just pisses me off. Like I don't, yeah. I was like, well, that's my thing. Like why I'm triggered because of of the things I have, my certain beliefs and value systems, and so just for I just want members listening that when we say something like we're also going through our own journey of
Yeah.
self improvement, right? Like you're continuously improving. You're a completely different person when we first met,
Yeah.
right? 2 years ago, I am, and Coach Nicole is, and everyone's always improving.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's the whole point, right? That's the point of life.
yeah,
Always improving, but accepting where you are and loving yourself, and always wanting to, because if you do that from that place, you're not in like a deficit, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah,
Right.
you operate very differently and you make decisions very differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I'm gonna start to, for example, do this program, do this workout, do this nutrition because I want to do this. And this is going to be a fun opportunity for me to push my limits and see what
Mhm.
I can do versus like I need to do this because if I don't achieve that goal, I am nothing and I suck. Right.
Yeah.
Which I feel like, some people tend to start
um,
their transformations from.
yeah, and hopefully we can bring that to their attention and maybe just change their language or how their self-talk is, and the group chats and our
Mhm.
calls are really good at that, and there's a lot of love in that tribe.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's like I always say this to everyone. It's like it's the best part of like the program,
Yeah.
right? As a tribe and the group call and having a community of people that are supportive, they're on the same boat as you, on a similar mission. Everyone's vegan, trying to be healthy and lose weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, so going back to like how people can deal with injuries and
Yeah.
sickness, I think like some clear steps of action. Um, I think the first one would be to just like manage the expectation of
Yeah.
what will happen because some people still want to have the same rate of fat loss or performance increase
Yeah.
during that time frame versus, when they're not sick or injured.
Yeah. Yeah. Check in with your coach and know that things are not going to go the same speed that originally we intended pre-injury. Things are going to change.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like you've had COVID, and um you listened to your body, you took the time, and then you're probably 100% back in the gym, right?
Yeah. It took me 2 weeks to get fully back, like properly in the gym. But the thing that helped me was like, I don't need to be peak performance in 3 weeks. I'm in this for a lifetime. So what if it takes
Yeah.
me a bit longer? Like it's okay.
The slow burn, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You can afford to take 2 weeks off. It's okay.
Get the
And
rest of my life to work out.
exactly. And then actually injury or taking a break for something will really um show you the relationship you have with it,
Yeah.
right?
With training and with food.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even social media for that matter.
Oh yeah. That was definitely a hard thing is you're bored. Okay, I still am within my calories because I was still tracking at the time. And then it's like, I don't want to spend a bunch of time on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. And so I just, put the phone in airplane mode and then was sleeping, was reading books.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, yeah, because it could be a huge waste. It is a huge waste of time. It is a huge waste of time. It's a great tool, but it's a huge waste of time.
Yeah. But if you have to abstain from something, it will show you how important and like where it lies in your list of priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did a podcast on my 72 hours of disconnection that I did like a few weeks ago, like a
Yes.
month ago.
Mhm.
And yeah, like I said, like when I turned it off and I put in my luggage and I was with Ivy and we are talking, or she was in the kitchen, I could find myself like my hands were just going to my pockets. I was trying to grab something. I was like, as this is happening, I'm aware that I'm doing it, but I'm not doing it. I'm like, how is
Yeah.
this happening? Why am I looking for something to grab?
Oh,
Yeah, definitely the mind is very addicted.
yeah. Yeah, because of the dopamine that you get from looking at fancy pictures and funny things, right? It's the dopamine addiction.
Yeah, like I'm not perfect. The amount of times I go on Instagram to answer one message and then it's like 10 minutes later and I'm watching reels. I'm like, how did I get here?
Yes, I know you go down that rabbit hole, and I do the same. I think most of us do the same thing.
Yeah, I'm working at the computer and I open my phone and I'm on reels like, stop, just stop it. Put the
You
phone
have
down,
stuff
read.
to do.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, sir, any let's do like any last words of wisdom that you would like to share with members or non-members that are going through that process, right? Maybe through this podcast they realize like, oh, maybe I do have an addiction to fitness. I do using as a coping mechanism or self-validation or self-identification. Like what would you share to some of those people listening?
Ah, um, I would share that it can change. You can learn how to cope in other ways that are more healthy,
Yeah.
and having a better relationship with fitness and food, right? Like we're never taught how to do this. Nobody's teaching us how to eat properly. That's why we have a program for that.
Yeah.
Same with fitness, right? Like there's always opportunity to change, and there's nothing wrong with you. It's lots of people have fallen into the trap of using food or fitness for coping. Um, but know that always try to strike a balance, and um, being aware is really an important first step. And then working through that, and knowing that you're doing it is half the battle, I think. I think that for me, that was one of the things that I'm like kind of triggered me, like, oh, I'm using this as a coping mechanism. It's
Hmm.
not the healthiest way. It's not the most balanced way, because, homeostasis for our, you know, our bodies is most important for our survival. And I think it's no different for our health, in terms of fitness and nutrition. So we'll always try to strive for balance. Um, get help, seek out other ways of coping. There's lots: meditation, journaling, talking with a friend, um, you know,
Walking in
creativity,
nature,
walking
reading,
in nature.
painting.
Yeah, so many things.
Yeah.
Try to find other ways to cope, um, and just trying to find more balance when it comes to exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
It,
I,
it
I, appre-
was
yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And, we have our weekly meetings and we're stoked for all of our members and just for the people listening that are members. Like I know that you guys know that we care a lot because we spend a lot of time with everyone in terms of like making adjustments on calls, on group calls. Like we stay longer on one-on-one calls when we need to.
Yeah.
For the people that are struggling a little bit more, we spend extra time with them.
Mhm.
And so just for anyone that's listening that wants an actual transformation. I'll just be blunt about it. Like you actually want to transform your body and your mindset and your health and your life. And you want to work with myself and Coach Sarah and Coach Nicole and have her join our amazing community. So there's a link in the show notes where you can get a bit more details about the program. There's a link for you to apply, book your free consultation call, and then just have a conversation to see if we would be a good fit. See what your goals are, where you want to go, what are challenges that are coming up. But I'm going to preface this is only if you're actually ready to do the real work. This is way more than us just giving you a workout plan and a meal plan and you're off on your own. It will be challenging. Everything we talked about, we do in the program. So there's a mindset component to it. Like you're going to be confronted with shit that's going to come up for you. You
Yeah.
probably know what it is. Maybe you don't know what it is, and you'll have to face it once it comes through. But I promise you, like, we're here to support you. We're here to guide you. And, as you go through that, once you learn that lesson, everything gets just so much easier.
Yeah.
Right.
More sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm tired of hearing people like, oh, I did this 10-week thing and I lost like 40 pounds. I'm like, in 6 months, let's have a conversation. How much of it did you put back on? Like how fun was that, first of all? Second, can you sustain the methods that you use those away during 10 weeks? Like I've done some of those
Oh
way
yeah.
back in the day, and I put on 50 pounds in a month after a cut.
Mm,
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah. Yeah, and that will impact your overall long-term health.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And your body
Yeah.
builds resistance to future fat loss once you
Yeah,
do that. It just gets
absolutely.
harder and harder every time you do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's do it once the right way and then learn the tools to take you through the rest of your life.
Yeah. Like I feel like the ideal scenario is I would like to grab everyone on their first cut so that we
Yeah.
could do it in like they've never tried to lose weight before. They do
Mhm.
it the right way, the healthy way. Their body's good for the future. You know, we've had a member, and I know you'll know who I'm talking about, but her weight was stable for 6 months.
Yeah.
Right? There's so much stress, there was so much resistance to the fat loss, and after 6 months, it just started melting away.
Yeah. The
Uh,
consistency.
yeah, exactly. That consistency, and some people have 40 years of yo-yo dieting.
Yeah.
Ultimately, your body has resistance. Like after 40 years, I think it's going to have a little bit of resistance
Yeah.
versus if it's your first or second or third times of trying to lose weight, but it's not impossible.
No. Well, we've had members who've never lost weight before. They're like unicorns because
Yeah.
almost everybody's tried, you know, uh, the lowest age where people are concerned about their weight loss are children, basically.
Mhm.
And but we were able to have a member who's never tried to lose weight, and his transformation, and you know who I'm talking about, I think, was phenomenal. And he's
Yeah.
still really healthy and maintaining his a healthy weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always possible. You just have to do it right. And you have to go with the body and not go against
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But I think the big part people miss is like mindset, and shit's gonna come up, and you have to be willing to do it with that. And honestly, like I don't want to say it's not worth it to take on a fat loss phase if you're not willing to face that, but
Yeah.
ultimately you will have to if it's going to impact your long-term health and longevity on this planet. You definitely need to lose weight. If that's going to impact you in that way, you're going to need to deal with whatever shows up. And for the love of God, reverse diet.
Yeah.
Reverse diet out of it. Don't want you losing 50 pounds and eating like a little tiny bird after.
No, it's no fun.
I love food is great. Reverse
I
dieting,
know.
like eating so much food right now, it's great.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Good, Sarah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to jump on the podcast. Always great to have you on the show. And again, just the members love you. I'm sure they're really excited to hear from you. Any last words you'd like to share before we wrap up the show?
No, thank you for the opportunity to have a sit down with you. We don't get a chance to chat very often. That's
Yeah.
not program related, but
Yeah.
no, it's wonderful. I love working with every single member, and it's an honor and privilege to be a part of their health journey. Like it truly is. I know that we hear that a lot, but I truly feel blessed to be a part of this.
Yeah. Well, you're crushing it. Not everyone likes the fact that I use crushing it, but it started and it stuck 2.5 years ago.
Yes, I know. I don't mind it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so again, everyone that's listening, there's the link in the show notes if you want some more information on the program. You want to work with Coach Sarah and myself and Coach Nicole. We'll take care of you. So go on there and book your call, and we will see you guys in the next episode on Friday. Ciao.
Bye.